things. Every single creature is filled with God and is a book about God. Amen. So I have a question. My question is, have you been watching March Madness? How many? How many of you? Not many. You gotta watch it. It's the best sport ever made, basketball. It is the greatest one, and I just love it. Love, love, love it. Been watching it since I can't even remember. It feels like forever, this week anyway. And everything about the game just excites me. Everything about the game just draws me in. But the thing that's probably the most meaningful, I guess you could say, for me about watching basketball is when I watch a game and players put their whole heart into the game. You know what I mean? When they're totally in it, completely and utterly in it. They leave it all out on the floor, as it were. They give their all. They play wholeheartedly. Right? That's the way I would phrase it. Now, I think maybe I've been phrasing it about this heart stuff because of the collect that we had for today and the reading from Jeremiah. Both of those things are pointing us to the heart. You know, the heart as a symbol. The heart is a symbol that is the primary way that we connect with God, according to Jeremiah. It's through the covenant of the heart. So it's the primary way that we connect with God is through the heart. And in the collect, it hits on not only do we connect with God, but from that connection, through our heart, we live a life that is full, joyful, and just filled with life. You know, when you have a life where your heart is completely open to life, man, that's living. That's what I think the basketball, the collect for the day, that prayer, and the Jeremiah reading, that's where it takes me, right there. When my heart is fully opened, that's when I'm really living. So, how do you do that, right? How do you live a heart-filled life? So you know what I did to try to figure that out? I Googled it. Did you ever Google heart-filled life? Do it. Because you know what I found out? Living a heart-filled life is a real thing right now. It's a big deal. There's books and articles and conferences and research. One woman who probably does the most research around this whole thing about living a wholehearted life has 10 guideposts that you can look at for doing just that. 10 guideposts for living a heart-filled life. Now, we do not have the time for me to go through 10 guideposts. So I really Google it and see how it speaks to you. Because here's how it speaks to me. This is how it speaks to me. Here's my summary of all the things that I looked at around living a wholehearted life. And I'll start with what it doesn't mean. Living a wholehearted life doesn't mean being perfect. That's not what it means. Living a wholehearted life doesn't mean being more productive. Living a wholehearted life doesn't mean doing more things. Living a wholehearted life means, now listen, because this is kind of long. Living a wholehearted life means embracing who we are as we are. Embracing who we are as we are, including our faults, our failures, and our imperfections. So embracing all that so that we're not afraid to be vulnerable and live with deep authenticity, with deep gratitude and deep compassion for ourselves, for others, and for all of life. Okay, now tell me what I just said. Because that's long, right? That's a long thing. But I was summarizing a lot of research, right? It's trying to get us to live an open, authentic life. And when we do that, we're wholehearted. Maybe this will help. Here's a picture. Here's a story. So there's a young man named Miguel. Miguel's 23 years old, and he's already had just a very, very hard life, okay? He was abused as a child. He was orphaned because both of his parents died when he was young. And so he joined a gang when he was a teenager. And he did all the things that gangs do. Well, by the time he was 21, 22, it was too much for him, and he was able to get out of gang life. And he got out of it primarily because he got a job from a place called Homeboy Industries. And Homeboy Industries is a place in Southern California that helps people who want to get out of gangs, and it gives them a job. So he's working for this Homeboy Industries, Miguel is. And he's worked enough to where he's able to buy a small apartment, and he lives there alone, a teeny little apartment. And one New Year's Eve, he gives a call to the guy who's the head of Homeboy Industries, a guy named Greg Boyle. And he works with gang members and really, really has given his whole life to that as his life. So he calls Greg Boyle and he says, hey, Happy New Year. Just wanted to call and wish you a Happy New Year. And Greg says back to him, well, thank you. That's really kind of you to call. He said, I've been wondering about you, Miguel. I thought about you over Christmas. Since he has no family, there's nowhere for him to go. So he said, I was just wondering, what did you do for Christmas? And Miguel said, well, I was here in my apartment. And Greg said back to him, really, all alone? You spent Christmas all alone? And he said, no. I invited five other people to come over. Now, these 5 other people were all ex-gang members who all used to fight one another. And they were all orphans, just like Miguel. So he said, I invited them to come over, and we had a good Christmas time together. He said, and you're not going to believe this, I made a turkey. And he said, oh, that's great, you made a turkey. He said, well, what else did you have to eat with your turkey? And he said, nothing, just turkey, that's it. He said, and then he said, Miguel got real quiet. And he said, there was one point where all 6 of us were sitting in my little kitchen just staring at the oven, waiting for that turkey. And Greg Boyle says, and there's a holy moment right there. He says, all the law and the prophets and the gospel and everything was crystallized right there in that moment. 6 young men who used to be enemies now sitting together, waiting to eat together. And so Greg said to him, Miguel, how in the world did you become like you are? He said, with all the pain and all the suffering that you've gone through in your life, how are you like you? How are you so kind? And Miguel said, well, even when I was in a gang and doing all the gang stuff, he said, I knew there was something good within me. I knew it was there, I just couldn't find it. He said, until one day, I found it, and it was right here, right in my heart, and it was goodness. And he said, and once I found that goodness, then I knew who I really was. And now, he says, nothing can touch me. That's wholehearted living. So while you're watching the basketball game today, and Auburn beats Florida, give wholehearted living a try. I'm going to try. Why don't you try too? Amen.